The light in the recital hall was jaundiced, stark against the deep wood of the stage. I remember it like an accusation, that sickly fluorescent stain on the polished floor. We were all lined up, 6 students sour-faced and nervous, our fathers lurking in the banquet chairs behind the judges, heavy as disappointed gods. I was 18, my camera in my bag under my chair, its delicate lens poking a bruise into my thigh through the nylon. Herr Klaus called my name in that clipped, skeptical way, the tone like a dry cough. Jasper Bergman, he said, and something in my chest stuttered, flickered, dimmed. I stepped up to the mic, the other students glancing over their shoulder, unsure if it would be ruder to make eye contact or look away. The jury stared at me, 3 old men with winter faces, my mother with her furious hands folded, one younger woman with nervous eyebrows and a pen like a scalpel. This was a music school, we were meant to play. I was meant to play. My clarinet trembled in my hand, sweat making the mouthpiece slick. I raised it. The first note came out thin, shrill as a wound. I heard giggles, a few rasping coughs shaped to sound like laughter. My younger cousin Victor snickered into his sleeve. "Begin again," said Herr Klaus, cutting the air with his hand. I tried, my throat closed. What came out sounded like a goose punched underwater. The jury's lips thinned further. My mother shifted in her seat as if she could disown me by distance. The piece, Midsummer Lied, went sliding out of control. I felt my left eye twitch, and rage, white and humiliating, climbed my spine. I wanted to scream at them, at all of them, for making me perform this charade. The piece collapsed halfway through. Silence dropped like a guillotine. I held the clarinet down at my side, aware of how faint my arms looked, how useless my hands. I could see the flush burning bright in my cheeks reflected in the jury's cold glasses. "Is that it?" asked Herr Klaus. I nodded, hating how small my voice was, how childlike. "Yes, that's all." The silence creaked. Then a sprinkling of coughs, a shuffling of programs, the forced, ugly churn of polite applause, the kind you give a charity case. I walked off the stage with a numb grin nailed on my face, ears ringing with humiliation. At home later, my mother said, "Why can't you focus? You're so talented, but you throw it away, always in your head with those pictures. That camera is ruining your discipline, Jasper." She said camera like it meant cigarettes or gambling. My uncle, pouring Weissbier, laughed. "A photographer, eh? How practical. The artists starve, but at least the musicians can teach. Don't be foolish, young." My father only shook his head and looked out the window. That was the beginning. The moment the whole world decided my dreams were a kind of infection, a foolish indulgence. I was an insult to their plans, not a possibility. I hated them for that, and I hated myself for needing their approval. I left Berlin the day after my failed recital. It was easier that way. I said nothing to anyone except a text, "Going to Hamburg for work." My mother didn't answer. My father just replied, "Be careful." I traveled by bus, camera in my lap, my single satchel at my feet, the city receding behind smoky glass. Hamburg was wet, colder than I expected. I slept in a hostel with walls thin as paper and the stink of boiled cabbage in the hallway. I took photographs of gulls circling the port, of rusted ships with wives' names painted in peeled letters. I documented the invisible city. The garbage pickers, the early morning sweepers, the lights sucked flat by clouds. I worked in kitchens, cleaned hotel bathrooms, shot anything I could find. Some mornings I woke with my spine locked in place, my hands so stiff I had to pry them open. The rage was still there, but frozen now, more a question than an answer. I sent my pictures to Berlin, to magazines that never answered, to websites, to photo competitions I found late at night. Sometimes I sold one for €3, a stain in the bottom of my bank account. My father sent a polite message now and then, "Do you have enough to eat?" I never answered honestly. At Christmas I stayed in Hamburg. My mother sent a card, unsigned. The family sent pictures, all of them around the table, Victor holding his clarinet like a trophy, smiling for the camera I'd left behind. It went on like that, year blurring into years. I grew used to invisibility. My mother's friends said he was always a dreamer. My uncle declared me a lost cause to anyone who would listen. At work I was sometimes day spinner, the oddball who took photos of trash instead of pretty girls. I went east to Poland, then to Budapest, following the routes of other exiles and runaways. My pictures changed. I started seeing shape and shadow in new ways. The geometry of concrete, the lonely figures at dusk, the old women staring out of windows like witnesses to crimes. I shot everything. I lived thin, saltless. Sometimes the rage came back, seeing a discarded piano in a junk shop, hearing a clarinet in a subway, feeling my own talent rotting. I thought I'd die here. I almost did once, drunk and face down in a park, camera gripped tight in my hand like a talisman, but I didn't. I survived mainly out of spite. In 3 years gone, in a bar off Alexanderplatz, I met Lucia. She had the bored beauty of an upper-class dropout and eyes that didn't blink away from pain. I watched her photographing a man asleep on a bench, her hands delicate, respectful. We talked about grain and exposure, about the difference between seeing and looking. She asked why I never shot in color. It's too much, I said. Color makes things sentimental. She nodded. But isn't sentiment better than indifference? We started shooting together, her Leica against my battered Canon. She taught me to edit, to see the accident inside the plan. She was the first person who looked at my images like they mattered. After a while we got a studio, little more than a squat really. We hung photos on clotheslines, cheap and hopeful. I entered everything, applied everywhere. The city was 1,000 eyes, mostly closed, but now and then one blinked. The big break, when it came, felt stupid and small. An online magazine, then a gallery showing at a space in New Köln, bare walls, 2 bright bulbs, the kind of place people went to score free wine and say, raw. But people came. People stood in front of my blown-up prints, the old man on his balcony, the woman wandering Mauer Park with her suitcase, and didn't look away. They looked, really looked. A local critic, a hollow-cheeked man named Sven, wrote, "Bergman's Berlin is orphaned, fractured, alive. He sees what the city denies." My uncle, reading the review online at a co-worker's suggestion, sent me, "Not bad for a dropout artist." It was the first time in years he used my name in public. One showing led to another. Lucia and I sold prints, cheap but honest. My name started appearing in lists, emerging talents. I heard through the grapevine that my mother kept a clipping or two. She never said as much. A year later, I won a small grant, enough for me to travel to shoot the vanished neighborhoods out east, to fill notebooks with faces and crumpled maps. I sent some photos to Berlin publications. They used them, sometimes even credited me. Some weeks I'd get a message from Victor, now a music teacher. "Saw your stuff in the papers. Do you ever want to shoot at the school? The kids love cameras." I never answered. I let silence do the talking, but rage is energy, restraint is fuel. I worked late, loved little, slept hard. My father wrote, "Your mother shows your photographs to her bridge club." I almost laughed. The call that changed everything came from the Berlinish Gallery, a major retrospective on Berliners at the margins. They wanted me, my raw, hard city, my orphans and outcasts. A solo show, 3 rooms, opening night, the works. I said yes. I said it twice to be sure it was real. For months, Lucia and I sifted through contact sheets, arguing over exposure, order, size. We printed massive, wall-sized images, the kind you can see veins in from meters away. Every detail mattered. I remembered every pitiless remark from my mother, every sneer in my uncle's voice. My skin itched with memory. A week before the show, Lucia and I broke up. "You need to do this alone," she said, kissing my temple. "Don't make the victory smaller by sharing it." For once I understood. The opening night, rain slicked the stones, Berlin's autumn wind clawing at the posters outside. I wore a black shirt, collar pressed sharp against my neck. I watched people file in, art students, critics, some of the old teachers, a few radio voices, and standing just inside the door with pursed lips and iron hair, my mother. She wore a navy dress, pearls shining dully in the artificial light. My father, slightly stooped, clung to her side. Victor trailed after, as did my uncle, swollen and red-faced, already drinking the free wine. I felt a pulse of ancient terror. I swallowed. I did not move to greet them. They examined the first room in silence. My photos of New Köln alleys, a man reaching for a cat in a broken window, a Turkish grandmother's knotted hands over bread. My mother's lips quivered. She pressed a napkin to her mouth. The critics hovered, scribbling. People murmured, "I remember that. Look at the light in this one." My uncle cocked his head, then grunted. "Could be a postcard," he said, too loud. Victor shushed him. The second room was harder. Addicts in a squat, a boy with ink across his knuckles, a woman staring into the camera like she hated it. My uncle's smile faded. My mother lingered at the last photo, a shot of a young man in a mirror, camera at his face. Me, reflected, dissolving in the blear. She ran her finger over the glass. Behind her, a critic spoke. "This one is a punch to the ribs, isn't it? Bergman's honesty is almost cruel." My mother straightened. My father watched me from across the room, eyes small, cautious. He smiled, tiny, broken, but a smile. I nodded. He nodded back. Then came the real test. The presentation, the jury, months of fear remixed as memory. I was to speak, to tell my story. I felt my stomach tighten, old sweat prickling. I stood in front of my family, the critics, my classmates, 30 strangers. Lucia hovered at the back near the trays of wine, arms folded like wings. I kept it simple. When I started, nobody called it art, I said. They called it hiding, but these pictures, they see Berlin the way I do, raw, not pretty. Real, not posed. I wasn't supposed to become anything with a camera. Guess I'm stubborn. A ripple of laughter. I looked at my mother. She was weeping quietly but completely. My uncle's jaw clenched. Victor nodded, his eyes wide. Even Herr Klaus, dried up and hunched, nodded once, approval not spoken, but there. Then the moment, the sale of my main piece, one of the mirror shots. A collector paid 15,000 euros right there, the signed check like a sacrament. My uncle's hand trembled with the wine glass. My mother gasped, hand to her lips. For the first time in my life they saw concrete, brutal proof, money and respect, real and public. The dream was real now, it was burning in their eyes. Reporters asked for interviews, the crowd clapped. The gallery director shook my hand, her smile sharp. I posed for photos, my own camera left behind all night. After my family approached me, my mother's voice was hoarse. I never knew how much you saw, how much you hurt. I shrugged, that's what the photos are for. My father put an arm around me, one hand on my shoulder. He had not touched me in years. He just said, "You did it, young." Victor shook my hand, pulling me into an awkward hug. My uncle mumbled, "You'll have to teach me that camera someday," his nose red. They finally looked at me as something new, not a runaway but an artist, not a ghost but a presence. After the gallery, after the emptying of wine glasses and removal of lights, after the applause drained away, I walked back to my old street. The rain had stopped, the city glimmered, all the wet neon pushing back the dark. At the stoop I saw old neighbors, they called to me, voice soft with surprise. "Bist du's Jasper? Didn't think we'd see you back here." I smiled, the muscles unfamiliar. I took their picture, promising them a print. I passed the music school, grey now but still echoing with practice. Through the fogged glass I saw a young boy, clarinet to his lips. He quavered out a single note, pure and lonely. I watched for a long time, letting the memory itch and then fade. The rage was gone. In its place, restraint and then peace. My dream, ridiculous and hard, was solid now, heavy in my hands like the camera that had always fit my palm better than any instrument. I shot the city again, my city at last. I sent the pictures home and this time they wrote back, every one of them. Berlin bloomed around me, I was home.